Hello.
Hello. Hi,
Hi.
handsome.
What are you doing?
So, just talking to you.
Yeah.
Not much.
I'm about to have a
Okay,
white
so
Tic Tac.
a white what?
Tic Tac.
Oh, the white Tic Tacs.
Look how white they are.
I don't remember what they sound like. I don't remember what they're like.
That's
Anyway,
what they sound like.
okay, so we have one listener right now, but we are about to do our little real world radio show, and this is actually a spoiler because we're spilling the tea on the real world, the episode 2 of the real world, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And we'd love to take some questions. You might find this more interesting if you're really into reality TV show. So here we go. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Pep's Real World with Cazwell, where we talk about all things real world homecoming. I'm an absolute real world fanatic, and I'm sucking Cazwell into the world of the real world.
You're sucking me in.
Because I know that you watched the original season, but I don't know if you're as excited about it as I am. So people might hear that in my voice.
You might be a little more
But
excited.
nevertheless,
Just a little bit. Can I just say,
So,
all your avatar
Yeah.
needs, the reason your avatar doesn't look like you is because there's no highlighter.
I always do wear highlighter. That's definitely true. And, for those of you watching on YouTube, we're also recording this on stereo. So we'd love to hear from people that are listening on stereo right now. We're going to take some calls. We'd love you to call in. We definitely want you to try to keep it to what we're talking about, which is racism in America. That's basically what we're going to be talking about. Do you
Real
think
light
systemic
topics.
Racism's real? Yeah, real light topics. Do you think systemic racism's real? If so, what experience do you have with it? Tell us about it. Especially if you're white, we want to hear what your position is on systemic racism and how you feel about it. Do you think it's something that is it just a buzzword people just throw around? Is it something that you are ready to listen to people of color about? Do you think it's just it shouldn't be mentioned because it's basically a race card that, gets everyone all fired up. How do you feel about it when people start talking about systemic racism? We're going to go into that a little bit later, but we are going to talk about the real world. First, Cazwell, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm had a really good, productive day. Talking to the woman in my life. So everything is good. Everything is good. I watched the latest episode, and I have things to say. But you are leading this.
Yeah.
You are leading this tango, baby. So I'm going to stand a little bit in the
All right.
shadow, and I have notes based on what you say. So I'm just going to take your lead, baby.
Okay. Well, last we watched last week's episode. It basically left us off. The original 7 housemates from Real World were reunited in the original house loft in New York City where they met 29 and a half years ago. I don't know why they keep talking about 29 and a half, honey. We've been battered and beaten over the past year. I don't got time for decimals. It's 30 years.
It's 30
ago.
years.
That's
yeah.
how I'm feeling. Yeah, it's 30 years ago. Anyway, so 30 years ago, they had some of the most charged and energetic and forward, kind of really progressive, I'd say woke conversations in the Real World house that we had never seen on TV before. And I think the success of that show is why we have things like The Real Housewives and other reality shows today. And so last week was the premiere episode, and we got to see all the housemates come back in, just getting used to each other, having some pizza, and we found out that one of the housemates, the heartthrob of the house, Eric Neese, wasn't able to join. He was actually, they were waiting for him to come around. Where's Eric? Where's Eric? And all of a sudden the TV comes in and says, you've got a message, very RuPaul's Drag Race style. And basically it's Eric's face popped up on the screen, and he says, I can't I can't be there. He's in a hotel in New York, which is, I guess, right around the corner, but he can't be there. And then it just basically, that's basically the end of the episode. And so the housemates continue to have a conversation, but this week, we pick back up right where they are, and we find out that Eric has tested positive for COVID, and he is really bummed out about it. So he basically vows to make a to make a really good effort and try to health kick his way out of being positive for COVID. He's drinking juices, making teas, and we watch him take a test on air. What do you think about that, Cazwell? Like, have you've been getting tested? So we all know what it's like.
I mean, he might be able to be so healthy that he can fight off the symptoms, which he definitely appears to be a very healthy guy, plant-based diet, all that. But I don't think he's going to be able to get rid of the COVID so that he wouldn't be able to spread it. Like, he's not Jesus.
He's drinking that tea like it is God's juice, honey.
He can get rid of the symptoms, or he could help subside the symptoms, but he ain't getting rid of COVID.
And that's important to do. It is important to do, but once it's in your blood, it's in your blood.
Yeah, he ain't giving any of them a hug.
So, yeah, he's probably going to have it for a couple of weeks, but we'll be able to see as it goes on. But one of the things that I really wasn't sure, based on because Eric was very enthusiastic. Anybody that watched the first season, Eric was the one in the house who said, "Yo, this thing that we're doing is going to be major." And when he was talking about the real world, but I don't even think he realized he was talking about reality TV. This is the first actual cast of a reality TV series that was monumental. Mm-hmm. And he was one of the people that was so enthusiastic about the show. So to see him come in and not be able to participate in the first episode, I couldn't tell how he felt about it. I was like, was he putting this forward like, I don't want to be in the same room with y'all, so I'm on a video screen? Like, I couldn't tell what he was thinking. But we were able to see how much he was really torn up about it in this episode. Very emotional. Mm-hmm. And we miss him. I want to take a call really quickly, just to get somebody else's voice on here and see what they have to say. You're on the line.
When Peppermint can make time for me.
Kind of it here. Yeah, I mean, we do talk twice a week for people to hear, but we're sorting it out, and I think it's something that's coming right around the corner.
Well, to be honest, if we were gonna do a podcast, I would rather just do it on stereo so that people can call in and we can talk to them, and so we don't have to go through like editing. And I'd rather just do it on stereo, to be honest with you.
Me too. Well, here we are on stereo. The next thing that happens is Norman is screaming and hollering in the shower, getting attacked by the showerhead nozzle, which has happened to me. Going and being in a strange house or hotel, and you get in the shower, and the last thing you want is you always kind of look at it like it's a snake, like it's going to kill you. And so it's always my worst fear to get in a shower and turn on the water and then have it like spray you in the face where the water's all hot, mess up your hair. It's kind of scary because you could like slip and fall from the fear.
Well, a rational, reasonable human being would turn on the water first and get a feeling for the pressure before they walk into the shower. I don't understand people that go to the shower and then turn it on. Like, that's like playing Russian roulette. Like,
but wait, it's true. But when you're at someone else's house or a nice place, and if you're naked on TV, you don't want to like be naked with the door open and turn it on. Because what if it sprays outside of the door? You kind of want to have the door closed. And it's one of those door showers. It's not a curtain. So you either have to be in or out, baby. In or out.
No. I can test it first, drop the robe, then jump in. I don't need to play it like that.
Well...
Anyway,
it's no surprise, but Norm is the first person this season, 30 years later, to be completely naked on camera.
Got a big booty too.
I'm like, okay, he's got some cake.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Yeah. He got some cake.
30 years gave him some cakes for sure.
Norm is the one who was always, he was basically always naked. I mean, Eric was the one who got paid to be naked.
Right.
But Norm is the one who was always lounging in the tub. And I'll be honest. When I was a young little lady, I was trying to take a peek below them bubbles to see what was going on. You know what I mean? I ain't gonna lie.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, not your type. One of the things that the next thing we get to see is that all the housemates we get to hear what they've all been up to.
Hmm.
And Norm has been working on his art. He created this new sort of computer desk stand. We get to hear what Becky's been up to, where she moved. She's basically been touring the world. She moved in with her father, who she took care of for years before he passed away. And Andre moved to LA, working on music and raised a family. Eric moved. Eric was actually, funny story, Eric was living after the grind, after, like, I'd say 2001 to 3, maybe even 4. Eric was a next door neighbor to the drag restaurant that I used to work at, Lips. And he would always come up and down, and he was very friendly, but he would never, like, we were trying to be like, Eric, why don't you come in sometime?
Right.
He never went into the restaurant, but he was always real cool and would say hi, and we got to know him because he lived like right next door.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Anyway, he ended up moving to Hawaii or California, and is basically like a spiritual advisor and healer, which I think is really interesting. And it's also interesting that Becky got into that line of work as well.
Yeah.
If anybody, Becky strikes me as the kind of person that didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. The rest of them seem to have a path that was clear for them.
Right.
And I think Becky was kind of just seeing what felt good and changing what she needed to. But one of the things I really appreciated is Kevin and Heather really had a lot in common. We got to see how they followed their path of in the hip hop world. And Kevin, although he's not a musician, was close friends apparently with Tupac. Did you know that?
It sounded familiar to me actually when he said it. I feel like they might have done something together back on MTV, like an interview. Like, I feel like it's not the first time I saw them aligned on television before. So it kind of made sense to me. Also, they both think very politically. And when he said that, Tupac was a fan of his, it made sense to him because Tupac was going in the direction of making political music. So, Kevin being, the first person, I don't know if it's the first person on TV, obviously reality TV, to maybe even to talk to a white girl the way he talked to Becky, probably really struck a chord with a lot of people that wanted to do that. And when
No, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to go too forward into,
Well, yeah, let's not go too forward. There are some, we get to find out that Kevin, if anybody watched the original season, Kevin got into some really heated and sort of notorious arguments or fights about race with the two white ladies in the house. Now, Kevin is a black man. He was an outspoken poet, community leader, organizer, and educator back 30 years ago. And he's also since then run for Congress. He's done a lot in his life, but he did talk about being sort of scarred by this, stigma and traumatized that he was kind of labeled the angry black man.
Right.
In a time when it just was not cool for black men to step up in the face of a white woman and call them racist at the top of their lungs. It's really interesting. There was an incident that happened, a couple of incidents that happened. I don't even want to talk about the incidents because we haven't even gotten there. And I'm sure they're going to end up covering it this season.
Right.
But the next thing that happened is Heather was really kind of straightforward and talking passionately about how she stayed on her career and stayed in her game.
Right.
She had a record deal as a rapper and then ended up, leaving all that and having a really successful kind of mogul career as a podcaster and a radio host.
Right.
I think I mentioned this to you last week, is that I was impressed to see a black woman who was signed with a major label on music decide to leave all of that. It was really, found it really respectful. Did you feel like I mean, I feel like the people who are the closest in the house, or the person that you would be the closest to in that house, would be Heather B.
Right.
And so, what did you feel when she was talking about her career and kind of how that went and what she went through?
Well, I feel like, you know, especially at that time, they weren't taking chances on many female rappers, and they didn't really know where to take it. So, besides Da Brat, which was hot at around that time, actually probably like 97, but there were no female rappers or really record labels investing in female rappers. So it seemed really new. So I think that when it started, it would all kind of revolved around the sex appeal of wearing a bustier and thongs and all that type of.
I mean, look, Salt and Pepper were definitely out, and they didn't sell sex the way that that a lot of pop stars did. I was actually watching a lot of Salt and Pepper videos recently. They didn't. I mean, they've always been very attractive, and honestly, they were singing it like "Push It" is very sexual, right? The song with their first huge hits. Well, that wasn't their first huge hit. Tramp was, I think, but and My Mic Sounds Nice, but that was like a first like kind of pop breakout.
Right, but Salt and Pepper,
they were sexy in their tight clothes, and they were wearing spandex, but they weren't selling sex the way that, pop stars would normally sell sex.
Well,
but I was going to say MC Lyte was out before Heather B.
Yeah, but MC Lyte and Salt and Pepper were also more on the decline in a lot of ways as this first season of The Real World came out. So,
decline.
Yeah, I mean,
they hadn't even had "Let's Talk About Sex," which was their biggest hit.
No, that was in 91. Yeah, I guess so. But look at it this way: Heather B was coming from the KRS-One perspective and the political rap perspective, and that wasn't getting any real financial backing.
It wasn't. Heather B was more aligned with Sister Souljah
exactly
than Salt and Pepper. But I do want to be clear: Salt and Pepper had they had a lot of hits, but they had like three big waves. The first wave was during Push It, which was in the 80s.
Right.
And then the next wave was during Assault with a Deadly Pepper, which had Shake Your Thing on it. And that was 89, 90. It was 1990, 89. And then the next big wave was the Let's Talk About Sex era, which was 1992.
Right, you're right. My bad.
No, 1992, Let's Talk About Sex. That came out the same year. It was Black's Magic, which was like end of 91, beginning of 92. And that's when they started to really be really sexual. There's a song called Sexy Noises Turn Me On.
Right.
And then the next big wave was during Shoot, which was 94. And so they were still irrelevant,
It's a lot of waves.
Can we take a call real quick?
Yeah.
Let's take a couple of calls. Hey.
We might.
Love you, girl. Okay, who's next?
You just did it.
That was it.
Girl, you just did it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We can definitely get into that when we get into the conversation 30 years later between Kevin and Becky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go through the next few
moments.
We're gonna get back to that comment, but the next couple things that happened is I think there was a lot of parallels between Kevin and Heather. They were both listed, even though Heather didn't really have a lot of fights. The only person that she really fought with in the house was Eric, like cats and dogs. But she didn't have any like major moments like Kevin did in the house. But Heather was also, I remember, Heather was also listed as the angry black woman, not because she was fighting with people in the house, but because of the political nature of her music.
Right.
You know, and I do remember that. And so it's just really kind of a way to kind of, I think, shut people down and be like, oh, you're angry, you're the angry black woman. And it's as if your emotions aren't justified.
Right.
And so we'll get back to that, though, because there's more, and it gets juicy and heated later. Julie, Becky, Norman, and Andre go to the Color Factory Museum, which I would love to go to. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I want to go, too. I want to jump those baby blue balls.
It was kind of confusing to me why there were macaroons in there.
I got hungry.
You got hungry.
Yeah.
But it looked like a lot of fun. When you come to New York, will you go to the Color Factory Museum with me?
Baby, our life is the Color Factory Museum. You know I will. Yeah, let's go if it's there. Is it there now? Did you look it up?
I go to a lot of museums. Yeah, I'll look it up. I'm surprised they were able to get to a museum during COVID. Maybe they had something special. You know, who knows? COVID special. So then next, Eric, who is back in his hotel room, separated from the other 6 guests, goes in and says I gotta beat this. I gotta beat this terrible COVID that I've got. And he decides to get buckets of ice and pour them in the bag and take an ice.
Because his temperature is 99.1.
Which, I mean, is that high?
No.
It's high, but that's not high enough for no ice bath.
Well, whatever. The moral of the story is he's daddy AF, and now he's showing off his body here, and he still looks good. He's still got a slamming body, and he must be like 49 right now, right?
Yeah, probably around that. But let me tell you what.
Plant-based.
He is. No, I'm talking about, honey, when he took off those clothes, he had trade. Did you see it?
No. I didn't.
I'm talking about his underwear. He took off his shirt and then his pants, and then you could see, and he was facing the other side, and it was looking kind of nice. And
well, I mean, you're the trade detective, so I believe you. But I think that his body looked really good, and I'm sticking to my plant-based diet, and maybe even doing some nice yoga.
Yeah, he got that yoga going on, honey. So then, next thing that happened, Becky tells the rest of the cast that years ago she had met the ghost of John Lennon. Now, do you have any ghost stories?
No, I don't have famous pop stars coming through the Fisher-Price board in my house.
Would John Lennon really go to Becky if he was going to make a return?
I mean, maybe John Lennon saw an opportunity for some quick publicity. He's like, oh, shoot, I see some cameras through this board. Let me teach you how to write a song. But even the spirit of John Lennon couldn't get her to sing on tune, so...
Ooh, wait, I thought she had a nice voice.
Maybe we were watching a different show. I'm not coming for her. I can only sing one note, too. But...
You are shade.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I've actually never... I don't know that I've ever had a real ghost experience, but I know that this is a very personal, but my grandmother passed... Well, both my grandparents have passed on at this point, but my grandmother died... My grandmother and grandfather were together for over 50 years. Plenty of time to figure out what they don't like about each other. And my grandfather was accused of infidelity. Let's just say that. My grandmother was very intuitive. And so she knew all the details, whether they were easy to find or not. And so...
Just like her granddaughter.
Hello. And she passed on. She had lung cancer. Gaga, I love you. Thinking about you. And my grandfather was alone in the house, allegedly. But he was there one day with maybe some company. My grandmother, they had separate bedrooms. That's how well it was going. And so after she died, he moved into her bedroom because it was a bigger bed. And he was in there, and I don't know what was going on, but the air conditioner above the bed caught on fire, and then there was this big Satan's. While there was something was going on in that bed, there was this big Satan's smoke mark above the bed. Maybe not Satan, because I don't think my grandmother went to hell. She went to heaven for sure. But like she was there, like, and he said, "Oh my God, the thing caught on fire," and he like moved. And next time we were there was this huge black mark up the wall, like that was a ghost. So that's that has nothing to do with John Lennon coming back and haunting Becky, but
yes, it does.
It just shows how like
I see the connection.
Yeah, good. So the next thing that happened was the roommates got a chance to sit down. They gifted Eric with a very sweet and touching kind of care package for him while he's in his hotel room, isolated from the rest of the cast. Mm-hmm. And then they start having a conversation about what things were like then and now. And they get a message on the screen that says, basically, 30 years ago, y'all were having these conversations that people were not that people are still having today. Conversations that are taking place around Black Lives Matter. Conversations that are taking place around the Me Too movement. All these sort of hashtag moments were, they're not new in humanity, but on TV, it was rare for people to be able to talk so freely about those things. And one of the first big arguments that happened in the house was between Kevin and Becky. And they sat down for what I think was an intelligent debate, but ended up getting a little out of it. The emotions were high, voices were raised, and basically Kevin was trying to tell Becky, to convey the fact or the notion that America is inherently racist and white people are racist. Just, white people are in a, well, he said, you're racist basically because of your upbringing in this country. That's what he was saying 30 years ago. She said her point was, I'm young and I'm, what we would call woke today. Mm-hmm. I'm progressive. Mm-hmm. I have all friends of all different backgrounds, and I'm not racist. And I think one of the worst things the last thing a white person wants to be called, even more than poor, is racist. That's my opinion. Whether it's true or not. And so that was a really tough point for, I think, them to kind of argue through. And 30 years ago, we see that Kevin was labeled as the angry black man for having that conversation with Becky. Mm-hmm. And so they got a chance to sit down and talk about it in the house. And Kevin tried to basically resell the point and tell her about it again. And Becky is not really doing a good job listening.
Nope.
What do you think?
I think that Kevin was very kind and gracious the way he brought the points back up. I'm really grateful that he apologized for her to calling her a stupid bitch, I think is what he called her. And because what I got out of when I did a recap and I watched season 1 over again last week and we got to that part of that argument, I felt like they were both perfect examples of what they were complaining about in their lives, because he was complaining about systemic racism and white privilege without saying the word privilege, because people weren't using that word to describe it at the time. And Becky was complaining about, well, you don't know, you've never been in my shoes, you don't understand the misogyny that I dealt with. So I felt like, and her ignorance towards systemic racism proved his point, and when he called her a stupid bitch, it kind of proved her point as far as the misogyny that she deals with. So I thought that was interesting. Then I was watching it again, and I remember thinking, well, I really hope that Kevin remembers that he did that, and he owned up to it. He's like, I called you a stupid bitch, and I want to apologize about that. And then she seemed like, it seemed like she had 30 years to think about it, and she didn't spend a minute thinking about it, because she really could have been like, yeah, I really didn't see a point of view. I didn't see the privilege that I had as a white woman. And my theory is that all white people are racist, really, and that until they educate themselves, because we live in everything is connected to racism here, and it's trickled down through everything, including our education. And we go to school, and Kevin made this point too, and I've said this before, that we go to school and we watch television and we see movies, and through the imagery, we are taught not only imagery but everything, even the literature, that white people invented everything important, that white men made all the important discoveries, and obviously you can't discover America when people already live here. That white people, thank God for Thomas Jefferson, thank God for Christopher Columbus, and so we're taught that white men specifically have created everything great, but we're not taught that a black woman created 3D technology. We're not taught that when the light bulb that a white man invented only lasted for 20 minutes, and a black man came along, made it out of, I could be saying this wrong, but he made it out of gas, I believe, and you could actually read a book with a light bulb now. We're not taught about the brilliant black minds that have invented things that we use today that we wouldn't have had without them, or the list goes on and on. So I think that it's not until you typically get out of high school and actually educate yourself and talk to people that have lived that life that you see how. I
think that's even. Those are inventions, and I think that's true. Like it's great, but it takes, and it's. I think one of the things about that, like if anybody's seen the movie Hidden Figures. To hear that there are some really great inventions and moments that black people and contributions that black folks have made in the world of science and technology. That's, you're specifically talking about science and technology, and there's a lack of black folks and people of color in the field of science and technology. And maybe that has a lot to do with the fact that we're not seeing them. We're not hearing about the inventions or the
literature,
the COVID vaccine,
or the literature. I didn't.
The COVID vaccine. We have the COVID vaccine today in part because of the work of a black woman, right? There's a lot of medical advances that we've made, using the cells of a black woman in terms of inoculations and things like that. And so those are just a lot of the examples in science. And I think that it would be great for us to see black folks really leading that in that way. The way we hear about you think about a scientist or a doctor, and most people's mind probably goes to a white man. So to your point, that's right. But even more than that, we never saw in commercials and film and television, in everyday, I never saw in everyday sort of media, black people just owning a house. I'm not talking about inventing a light bulb. I'm talking about owning their own house, owning their own land.
That's
the first people I ever.
That's what I meant when I said that, like, racism has touched everything. Obviously, it's not just discoveries and inventions. It's getting a bank loan. It's owning a house. It's literature. It's all these contributions that black people have done for the country and the world. And like, I wasn't taught about, no James Baldwin book was put in front of my face when I was in high school, who changed my life, so.
They just didn't want, I think part of that is because they wanted black people to think, and this is the thing, that, the commercials and the media that I did see, the movies and films and the stories that I heard about black people were either about black people being slaves or about black people doing drugs out in the street and being gangsters and robbing people. And if there was a commercial or something about black people who weren't drug dealers and robbers, then it was just street people out eating chicken on the stoop. But they weren't you would never see, and I think you and I had this conversation before, skincare commercials. You would never see a black woman in a skincare commercial. No. They would never show her cleaning her skin and taking care of her body. They only showed white women doing that. Baby commercials. Believe it or not, when I was younger, it was probably the mid to late 90s before I saw a black baby in a diaper commercial. Crazy. But they would never, when you would show something that was supposed to signify purity, it was only white women and white babies. Never black folks.
Betty Crocker was always white.
All of these examples.
Yeah.
Huh?
The Betty Crocker commercials, it was always a white woman in a nice kitchen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, showing people having like appliances and a nice house and having a building a beautiful home life for their family. You would only see white people doing that, white women. You would never see a man doing it. You do now, which I respect. You actually see men doing like childcare and commercials and different things, but and you know
That's recent.
obviously the system
Just as
evolved,
recent. It seems recent. Just as recent as like I feel like we didn't even see interracial relationships in commercials until like four
until
years
a few
ago.
years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I remember that. And so this is what we mean when we're saying when people like Kevin are saying the system is set is by default me the goodness and the successful the image of that is white people. And we all know that there's white people who aren't successful, and we know that there's black people who are and Latinx people who are, but we don't really see a lot of examples of that historically. That is changing, thank goodness. And so I think based on what people are able to see in the landscape, not just people of color but also queer people and women, we're able to see these examples. But we weren't seeing that back in the day, except for on the Real World having these conversations.
Right.
Let's take a call, and then we'll get a little bit into Kevin and Becky's conversation.
All right.
Hey, Chavez. Thanks. Thank you so much for that, Chavez. No, I'm not one to necessarily check other girls or like put anyone in their place. If I have a relationship enough with somebody and I care about them, their career and and I notice something wrong, then I would have a heart to heart with them more. I wouldn't like curse anybody out unless she like was completely inappropriate and was on a rampage. But I think there's a little bit of perception involved there. I know that we hear stories, especially before the pandemic, about girls going in and being horrible devils and being really rude and demanding red M&Ms. And a lot of those things are kind of overblown stories, I believe.
Come on,
There
Valentina.
are certainly girls that are rude. But you know, the truth is that there is, I think there are people, especially some of the younger girls, who get involved in RuPaul's Drag Race thinking that they're just going to be the next big thing. And, you know, maybe there's a little bit of an expectation with that. But folks, cut these girls some slack. These girls are working for maybe $100 a week, and or a day, maybe a couple times a week. And by the time they get onto something like RuPaul's Drag Race, they got to find and spend $20,000-$30,000 on costumes to bring to the show when they're only earning $100 for a gig. And then when they get out of the show, then they're instantly, people are messaging them, telling them that they're a bitch, telling them how they think they are, who they think they are, or asking things from them. And then there's a lot of promoters that want things for them for free. And these girls have spent thousands of dollars and want to make that money up. And so, yes, they charge a lot of money for that next show because they were on TV. It's really interesting that RuPaul's Drag Race is able to have an economy. There's not a lot of shows that have an economy where you leave it and you know you're going to get bookings and get paid.
Not even on Real Housewives.
Being on TV, and I said this the other day, the only thing that somebody like Beyonce, who's on, let's say, MTV, a girl from RuPaul's Drag Race, and people on, Brad Pitt or whoever, the only thing that and somebody on Project Runway, the only thing that all those people have in common is that they were all on TV. We're not all rich. You don't get paid just because you're on TV, unfortunately. And if you could see the money that we get in residuals from which is the earnings that you get for later for being on TV, it is like literally a check for 26 cents.
It's like streaming on Spotify.
Yeah, it's like streaming on Spotify. And so yeah, let's take another
back to racism.
Systemic racism. Hey, Bluettes.
I think this is a lot of people's first time.
Yo, you got it. Thank you, Bluettes. Next call.
Yeah.
TBO June.
All right, shit.
Thank you.
You want to hit another one? Girl, stop.
Okay, next call. Aw, we're not gamers. That was a cutie pie. It's kind of young to be up late at night on stereo.
Go to bed.
Next final call.
Ooh, that's sexy.
Yay.
That was a nice wet one.
So sexy. So that's the big moment. And so Julie and Becky and Kevin are having this conversation, and it doesn't seem like Becky's getting it. What do you think? It doesn't seem like she's listening.
Not only is she not getting it, everyone's looking at you like, bitch, why ain't you getting it? Like, everyone's looking at her like, everyone. If you look at everybody else, everyone's got their hand over their heads. Every time Becky talks, everyone's like oh, Becky, girl, Becky, Becky, just stop,
If we could turn it into a meme, if we could turn that moment into a meme, it's like the epitome of hashtag read the room.
She's still
you know what I mean?
defensive to this day. She did say that, that was 30 years ago, and I was a very young and defensive woman, and it's like, what's changed?
And now we're just 30 years older, and you're still defensive. And I do want to give her the benefit of the doubt. I understand trying to make her point, but it doesn't work to be a part of a system that someone who the simple fact is, if you are in America or a system like this, where we were talking about the only people we saw for years and years and years and years and years, or learn about in school, were the accomplishments of white folks, then you are in a system, an education system, a social system, any kind of system, a job and an employment system, a healthcare system that instantly benefit white folks over other people. And that's just the way it is. That needs to change. Mm-hmm. We need to kind of take a look at that. But the only way that will is if the people who are benefiting from it take a minute and say, you know what? I am benefiting from this. That's all. That's all systemic racism needs. Mm-hmm. Is for the people who are...
Well, that would be a nice first step. But here's the thing: if Becky had this conversation
it's a nice first step.
If Becky had this conversation 30 years ago, it was very much talked about all over. It made headlines. People talked about this conversation they had. That it obviously impacted her enough to reflect on it. And then everything that's happened ever since then, like in between, just like Ferguson and Black Lives Matter and the discovery of white privilege. I mean, let's be real, like that word wasn't even used to describe it at the time. And so now it's like people really checking themselves and see the white privilege they have as compared to Sandra Bland had, so getting pulled over by a cop. So just everything that's happened till then, she's not gonna get it. See, it's a state of mind that she doesn't want to. She already wants to see. Like, so many people just don't understand. Like, I don't care if you have a black boyfriend or you hire black people, or even if you have a black child, you can still be racist just because you believe in the power structure of systemic racism, or still let it control you.
Yeah, bottom line is, if you are white and you are in a Western society that's predominantly, that the government is mostly white, mm-hmm. and has been since that country was formed, and you say, I'm not racist, and if you're spending more time saying I'm not racist and you're in those countries and born in those countries, then you're not able to be open and doing the work of listening. And that's one of the most important things that has to happen when we, it's like a woman being the only person in the room when a bunch of men, and her saying, I'm uncomfortable with how this is happening because it feels like, I'm having certain feeling that only a woman could understand. The men can't be like, I don't know what you're talking about. No, we're not doing anything wrong. No, you have to listen. And so I think that's part of the issue. But
I mean, we can't even get people to put their masks on. How are we gonna move forward with racism? I mean,
it's true.
I see. Here's the thing:
wrap it up,
we will wrap it up, but I think it's important. The syndrome that Becky seems to have is that racism is not just, I hate black people, I use the N-word, I'm okay with people using it. Like, it's either that or off. There are different, I mean, racism is racism, fucked up is fucked up, but there are different levels of the spectrum that are still racism, So it all has to do with how it's affected you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she has a very cookie cutter kind of old school view of what racism is. And it's not even racism. I think people like that tend to think of, don't, she said it during the conversation. She didn't want to view it as a system. She wanted to view it as the actions of an individual. That person is racist. And then you can deal with it. That person said the N-word. That person is in the Ku Klux Klan. So they are racist. And then I think that's as far as her kind of scope of being able to measure racism goes, based on what we see on the show.
Right.
But she's not understanding that there's a system that automatically prices black people out from being able to get homes, or actually makes it more expensive for black people to do something than white people, or tells black people they have to walk here and then climb up here and bring a card to vote. Oh, your card has a tear in it, you can't vote. But any white person can come and vote.
Oh, it says drive instead of DR period. You can't vote. On your ID.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Those are that's a system that's set up, and we can't blame the person that's at the window taking the ticket. We can't blame necessarily the doctor. We can, because doctors are to take an oath, but we can't necessarily blame one individual. It's not like if you fire the person at the voting booth, then the whole system's going to change. No, it's set up in the rules that way. You can't fire just because the real estate agent gets reported and loses their real estate license because they, and reported them as a racist. Guess what? The next one's just going to step back in and keep doing the same practices. And it's about a collection of practices that benefit one group over the other. And so she wasn't able to see that. And she basically was talking about, it's not a system. It's not a system. It's individuals. We were talking as individuals. And you're right. She just didn't get it.
It's a shame.
I can't wait to see. Let's take these calls. Yeah, let's take these calls, and then we'll close it out because we are ready to look at the next episode.
I laughed at the balls.
I think it's hey. Mm-hmm.
This might be a good way to wrap it up.
Go ahead, do it real quick. Yeah, do a quick one, like a 2-sentence thing.
I'm ready. I'm ready when the world is ready. And no one wants to do a show where there's going to be 10 people 6 feet apart watching them. Obviously, we prefer to do live shows rather than drive-in theaters where people are still in their cars and things like that. However, I'm ready to kick back and bite the bullet until we are at a place in which we can get as close to normal as possible. I don't think that we should rush into it.
Right. I agree. Well, look, we all want to be safe. In the meantime, make sure you're wearing your masks and do a little bit of work and try to see if you can get yourself that vaccine. A lot of the rules about the vaccines are changing, and they're lowering some of the restrictions for more people to get them. So make sure you keep yourself safe. In the meantime, Cazwell and I are going to keep meeting every single week, talking about one of my favorite shows, The Real World. It comes on every single Thursday on Paramount Plus. Hopefully you'll check it out. And let us know what you think in the comments. Did you watch? Are you watching? Are you going to start watching? Do you think systemic racism is real or a figment of imagination? Let us know what you think in the comments. Let's keep it going, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Love you.